Oh, there we go. Hi, guys. Just getting ready to get started here. So uh, I'm going to share my screen with the agenda and we'll go over the agenda. And yeah, so Lloyd, would you give me a thumbs up if you can see the agenda now? Yep. Okay. So here we go. We'll review and approve our minutes from last time. We'll review the state response and next steps for our reimbursement and direct aid plans. And I forwarded you all the email that Janine and Tina and others of us received this week. Well, actually, it was a week ago today, but then Janine here in a while will have a bit more to say about the state's follow-up to that email, and we'll go through per this first agenda item, kind of my understanding of the email and what I've gleaned from talking with John at the accounting firm. And then we'll look at our Marion County proposed response to the state of Kansas that would be in keeping with all of this, because they have asked us for some more information. We'll review the aid administration plan we came up with last week and see if that needs to be tweaked any. And then we'll talk about next meeting date and what we'll need to do in between now and then. So that's the agenda for this morning's meeting. Let me now go ahead and share the minutes, and we'll just review those quickly and see if we're ready to approve them. Okay, so there's our minutes from last week. Moving down to this one here, we reviewed a draft copy of the cover letter that will accompany the grant application form for business and nonprofits. And I believe Anthony will be able to send us final versions of that here sometime after this meeting. One thing that I will come back to on that later, but I won't go into that now. Christine did contact SJH&L for verification of whether a DUNS number is needed. And unless they're going to be requesting $750,000 or receiving, I should say, unless an organization is going to be receiving $750,000 of federal money for the course of a year, they do not need a DUNS number. So each individual organization is going to have to consider that for themselves. My guess is anyone who's receiving that kind of federal money already knows they have to have this DUNS number and already has it. For example, I know Tabor College does. So I don't think that needs to go in the cover letter, is my point. To notify businesses and nonprofits the available funds, we had a communication flow that's outlined. Here it is, and we'll talk a bit more about this comm flow and promotion of the nonprofit and business grants in our direct aid plan as we go through the meeting this morning. But this is what we settled on, and so that looks accurate to me. And I've reviewed the minutes before I sent them to you all. Thanks, Christine, for doing this. We made a few revisions, but they looked good to me. We discussed the administration process for the direct aid funds, and we're going to go over that in a bit more detail. As promised here, I emailed you the process document, and we can change that if we need to today. We did talk about, and that recommendation I think came from Tina to help control the workload. $150 would be the requirement per single invoice. And so that probably needs to be a part of the cover letter, and I'm assuming Anthony has made that change or will. And then finally, we still haven't actually confirmed a due date of receipts, but since I haven't heard a confirmation, I have decided for us October 5th, because we had talked about October 15th, but the accounting firm thought that was a little too late in the month. So I moved it up to October 5th, and that will change in the communications that we give to people. So that's the minutes from last week. Are there any questions, or do you all see anything that needs to be changed there? I'll give it 10 seconds. If I hear nothing, we'll consider them approved by consensus. Hearing no comments or questions, let's consider the minutes from September 4 of 2020 approved by consensus. And then let me look at the agenda and get in my mind what I need to pull up next. All right, so the state issued to us, and here's my understanding of it, an approval for our reimbursement plan, and it's completely clean. There were no requests for clarifications or more information at all. For the direct aid plan, there was some, while it was approved, there was some request for more information. And so we'll get to a bit more about that in a moment. I think after talking with John at the accounting firm, that, Tina, we're good to go for the reimbursement plan part of what we submitted to the state. And so whenever you all would want to put that on the county commission's agenda, even this coming Monday, I think it's fine. And following that approval, checks could be cut and sent to the various entities that are receiving reimbursement funds, because they've already provided their receipts, and that's already been sort of vetted, if you will. Tina or Janine, do either of you have any questions about that piece? You guys are muted if you're speaking.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Do you?
Only if there's any question on payroll.
Was some of the reimbursement, Janine, reimbursement of salary and wages?
Yes,
Okay.
For any of the other agencies or just the county?
just the county, I believe.
Okay, but the other agencies didn't
And-
submit anything like that?
Well, in Hillsborough's reimbursement request had a substantial amount of salary included in it.
Okay, so I would say that on the salary pieces, maybe we delay the reimbursement of those until we have full approval on that, but
I
on
would
the
think
rest,
So
we could do the rest.
Tina, I think what needs to happen there is, now I've read everything that I can get my hands on, and I believe we're fine, but I do not have an expert eye for that for sure. I think John or Scott would, and so I would encourage one of you to call them directly and get their opinion of that. There's been some new information that came out. I've read it, and my assessment of it is we're still fine with what we have in there. But to get their go ahead would probably be wise. And if you can't get that before Monday, I would concur that maybe you hold that back until you can get their go ahead on that piece.
So I guess my question real quick, I know that there has been additional information, and I'll admit that I haven't read all of it, but if the state has approved the reimbursement, then what are we waiting for?
Well, the state says use extreme caution if you're approving payroll costs, because they're going to be scrutinizing, and they may be requiring additional documentation to verify that it was an expense that should have been submitted. So we just want to make sure that we're sure that that documentation is available, and that
So I
requests are.
realize this isn't your decision, but why would they approve something that they're unsure of? I realize, Tina, that's not, but that's.
So the timeline on it, Anthony, went something like this, and this is a snapshot, but we turned it in, they did approve it, and then following the email memo where they approved it, they came out with more emails that said, hey, here's some further clarifications. The state's going to be scrutinizing this. You better make sure. So even though they had approved it, the timeline for the warning that was issued, I call it a warning, it felt like a warning to me, actually came after the memo that said it was approved.
Okay. So do we know what kind of additional information they're going to be looking for?
I don't think they're going to be looking for anything additional to what we've already provided. And I think we're fine. I just think it would make sense for our accountants to nod before we release the money in that area.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. I absolutely, I do want to protect the county, and, we don't want to have to write a check back to the county. So I understand. I just, was just kind of curious.
Well, and I'm sure
How that looked like, so.
I'm sure that those who would be receiving those funds could really use the money. I get that, but one extra week might be wise here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So then the second thing I was able to determine by talking with John at SJH&L is that we could go ahead and start promoting our business and nonprofit grant application. We can go ahead with that because my thoughts, and he agreed totally, was even if we have to put a stop to it in some way, because they are requesting some additional information from us. So we don't have a clean approval there yet. But even if we didn't get that clean approval, we haven't released any money yet, so we're fine. And I think to continue to wait to start promoting that is a mistake, because we're going to run up against people not having enough time to get their application in, us to award the grants, them to start submitting receipts for funds and that sort of thing. So just as a reminder then, here's what we committed to, if I can find it. As a promotional plan. So the Spark Grant application, business and nonprofits, ComFlow, this is what we've committed to, and it was in the minutes as well. Do I have the right thing on the screen? Okay. Okay, so Chambers of Commerce, Anthony, in other words, what I'm saying is where our names appear, we can execute as soon as we're able to, all of us. It's time, it's go time, I think, on this. Now, we will need, Anthony, we will need a final copy of the cover letter and the application form.
Yep.
Where are you at with that?
I need to take the DUNS number stuff off real quick, and then I will send it out to everybody. You'll either get it today or you'll get it first thing Monday. If everybody would just give a thumbs up when it gets sent out that, hey, it looks good, or if you've got a question or if there's a suggested change, let me know. But let's try to get a pretty quick turnaround so we can get this out.
And let me add that it would be helpful if whatever input we give to Anthony, we reply all, so everybody's sort of tracking together.
Yes. Yep.
Hey, Anthony, on that cover letter, I can't remember, did we have, and I don't have it pulled up right now, did we have in there what the deadline for application for one of these grants is?
I don't think we put in a deadline in that.
I think we better get that added.
What is the deadline?
Well, let's talk about that. So as I was looking at the calendar this morning, y'all, here's what went through my head. There's going to be quite a bit of work to do once we get all the applications in to decide that potentially there's a lot of work to do to decide who gets what grants and for how much. And then following that, once we award the grants, those organizations, those businesses and those nonprofits are going to have to get together their receipts, their purchase orders and that sort of thing. That information has to be turned in, triaged, organized, turned into the accounting agency for approval, submitted back to us for us to submit to the commission, and finally approved before funds can be released. There's a lot there. So I'm going to suggest, and I'm just going to throw it out there to see what everybody thinks, that the deadline for grant submission would be October 1. By end of business, October 1. Grant application is what I really meant to say there.
I'm going to say October 1st, 2020 at midnight. Because it really
Okay.
doesn't, I mean, if we don't get it till 5, we're not going to look at it anyway. So I'm going to say at midnight. And
Yeah, that's true. So what, that's what you're recording now, Anthony, and that's what I'm recommending. But what do others think of that? Does that seem satisfactory to everybody, or is there some hesitation on that date?
I think if we have that letter at least by Monday and can get that letter out, I think that's probably realistic. But if we wait a week to get that letter out, I don't think it is, because I know most of the facilities or entities I work with, well, and I'm sure you all have a lot of other things on your plate.
Yeah, that's a good point, Deidre. I was going to bring that up too. My suggesting October 1st assumes something, and it assumes that this promotional plan that's on our screen, that's also in the minutes that Christine sent for this week, can be executed pretty much ASAP. Anthony, are you able to get us a proposed final copy of the application form and letter today yet, so that by Monday?
I'm going to, Troy, I'm kind of editing it as we're talking here.
Okay,
So I might have
okay.
it done before our meeting's done.
Okay, all right. So thanks, Deidre. I would concur with that. Dave, were you going to mention something there?
Yes, what about October 4th at midnight? It's Sunday night. It gives them the weekend to work on it.
Well, here was my hesitation on that, and not that we can't do it, but I do want to tell you what my rationale for making it October 1st was. I know that for me, Fridays are the day that I've reserved for this group to meet, and I clear my morning schedule so that this can happen. And so I thought an October 2nd meeting, so that we could begin the work of assessing who gets a grant, would be helpful. That was what was in my head.
I need the artwork and the guts of what you want to say and some logos. If anybody has any, what they want to put in a brochure, we can knock that out in 6 or 8 hours. But we can
Okay.
have it Monday. I got
Sure.
stuff today.
I don't know of anyone who's going to get you artwork. Honestly, unless I'm missing something. You guys speak up, because
Want to put the Marion County logo on there? And
yeah, I think,
we'll come up with something.
yeah, would you guys be able to? Tina, you have any thoughts on that?
I was just going to say that I can try to work with Dave to come up with some, I don't know, something.
Sure.
We'll make it pretty.
Dave, you guys should have, I think, once you get the letter and the grant application form, you should have all of the content bullets that you would need, and pick and choose what goes in there. And that's something I can lend a hand with. I would be, I feel I could help you with that piece. So if you came up with something and you showed it to me, I could look at that and make some suggestions about content that I think would be helpful. Artwork wise, I'm of no use there. So if you guys have got somebody on your team, Dave, that can take something off the website and coordinate with Tina, come up with something that, looks fairly professional, I think we'd be okay with that. That sound okay, Dave? Or?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. So back to the October 1st date, given what I said about envisioning a meeting on October 7th to start the work of awarding grants, how do we feel? Do we feel that's okay? The reason I thought it would work so well that way, again, assuming what Deidre said, that we would get the promotion out there starting Monday, is because our application process is pretty simple. It doesn't require a ton of creative and innovative thinking to fill out that form. Okay, go ahead, Tina.
Well, my only concern is, if we have a very simple application and we go ahead and do awards, are they going to come back and put a whole bunch more requirements on us after that? Just like the funds that came through the CDBG block grants, they kept adding requirements and changing the requirements after we had already taken some actions, and we kept having to go back to those businesses over and over again to get more information. So that was very frustrating. So I'm hoping that that's not the case with this process as well. But
Yeah, you would know the potential for that, Tina, better than I'm only going off of the information I have so far. Now, I will show on the letter that we'll go over that I've proposed as a response letter to the state's request for more information. I addressed some of that in there. So we'll look at that in a moment. Okay, so
Rusty, don't you think we'll have to put some sort of wording on there? I guess my fear would be we need to say for, October 1st is the first round. We can't just say that's a drop dead date due to the fact I don't think anybody on this committee is in favor of sending money back.
So are you suggesting, Aaron, that in the cover letter, we would put a bit of a disclaimer statement in there that would say, depending on state requirements, we may reach out and ask you for more information? Is that the kind of thing?
And I just worry about some that aren't able to get stuff done in the 2 weeks time period. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we want to say that on October 1st, that's the last time you can apply for this grant.
When would you?
On our community development block grant, we had language that said late applications will only be accepted if another round of funding is made available, or something to that.
Something like that makes sense. I mean, we're talking a pretty good sum of money, and I'm assuming we're going to get some.
Just my 2 cents. I definitely don't want to send any money back, but I'm reluctant to put anything like this is the first round, because then we might have people that there'll be money later. We need everybody to apply now.
I think there's some way we can encourage them to apply now, and with the understanding that it may back up if it's not all gone.
I really think we need to have everybody apply now. I mean, this is, that's how all of this money is. You got to apply now. It's got to be spent by a deadline. So I think people have to just do it.
Because there's going to become a point in which we're going to need to, potentially transfer money from where it's not being used to where it's being used to. And I want to make sure we allow some time for that to happen if we need to. And as Tina said, I will not be a bit surprised if 2 weeks from now the state comes out with some new stuff that says that we need this and that. I know that the accounting firm has said $750,000 for a DUNS number, but I'm dealing with a federal program right now that Tina was referencing earlier that you're not getting more than $25,000 max, and you have to have a DUNS number. And they told us that after the fact, of course. So luckily, here in Hillsborough, most of the businesses are getting numbers because of that. So we'll probably be okay. But there may be a couple that, it can take up to 30 days to get a DUNS number. So we're going to be in a time crunch if they decide that, yeah, we need to have DUNS numbers.
Aaron, do school districts have DUNS numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so let me kind of compile what I was hearing there. Aaron's concern is, let's don't send money back. So if we set an October 1 deadline and then only half the money in these grant programs gets requested, now what? I didn't understand what you said the first time, Aaron, so now I get what you're saying. Others are also saying we're under, I'm feeling this, what I'm about to say as well, but I think others are saying it, that we've got in a sense, a long way to go in a short time to get there. And so we really need to establish a deadline. And then a third piece of all this is we may need to amend our direct aid plan anyway. And so how does that all fit together? I like this idea. I like the idea of sticking with a deadline of October 1 and communicating it as a hard deadline, but in our minds knowing that we're pretty determined that we're not going to send the money back. The county needs it. The organizations in the county need the money. And so if we find out that we haven't hit the right buttons with our distribution plan of this money because it's not getting used or it's not getting applied for, that could happen. We've known that from the beginning that could happen. Then I think as a task force, and I commit as giving leadership, that we will keep our eye on that. And when we sense that might be happening, we're going to do our due diligence and we're going to pivot and amend in ways that make the most sense to us at the time. And so that's the way I'd like to approach that, Aaron, if you're comfortable with it, because if we don't put a hard deadline, my experience is we'll be wading through applications 10 days after the deadline, and it'll become a bit frustrating.
No, that makes sense to me. And maybe I'm just, I guess I don't have that pulse on, Anthony and those of you that work with the cities, I guess I just look at that as it's a large sum of money, and I just want to make sure that we get it to our folks that need to get it. So
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to a hard deadline at all. I want to make sure that we're able to help everybody that needs help.
Yep.
And another part of this, I'm hoping that this application is simple enough that businesses can pretty much do it, get it to us. But I'm only one person, and it is likely I will have a lot of questions. I'll be helping a lot of businesses with this. And I'm only one person. I don't have unlimited time. And so I'm hopeful that it's simple and most businesses can get it done and get it into us. But if I get overwhelmed with questions, it's going to take me some time to wade through that.
Yep.
Well, okay. So thanks for everybody's input there. Thanks for raising that, Aaron. Deidre has been raising that with me a couple times already as well. And so I think we've collectively got our eye on that issue right now. And until we start getting these applications in and seeing what people are requesting out of what's been allocated to them, we're not going to know how we're going to need to pivot. So let's put the October 1 deadline in there, Anthony, and we'll deal with the caveats to it as we go. So back to what I've shared. Deidre, you're good with the healthcare and long-term care and getting the cover letter and application form to those organizations. Lloyd?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Lloyd, you're still planning on coordinating the web link?
Yeah, we discussed that this morning again. Tina and I have gone over it. We just need the materials to dump in there. So we talked a little bit about it being confusing about saying coming soon and who would be answering questions, things like that, as opposed to just getting what we have up there and posted.
Okay.
So it's available. The other thing we discussed was probably steering away from any type of, because the functionality on the web, our website right now doesn't really have that as well for like a online application
Right.
fill in. I think that's probably fraught with a little bit of danger on our side. Hey, somebody said they didn't finish clicking something on their end and it doesn't come through. We don't see it that way. If we just have a hard copy and they submit their applications, then we've got it.
So you'll just use a PDF printable type
Yeah.
of version. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, thanks, Lloyd. And then Randy, you're planning on executing with the county database, and we may have some overlap there, but I think that's fine if people get things twice.
I had one more question, Rusty.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, do you think we'll be finished up with the application and the letter today, tomorrow, or Monday?
I think if I understand Anthony right, he's going to try to get the proposed final versions to us today, give us until start of business on Monday to comment for edits. And then on Monday, he would make edits potentially or not, and then get us Monday before noon what we need, and we can execute at that point.
Okay. I was just wanting to know what the
Yep.
sign-off process was going to be. All right. Good.
I'm almost done with it, so you'll have it shortly.
I thought we get some stuff today that gets started as a rough outline, and it'll be a work in progress.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
We'll work on it all weekend.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Lloyd, does that take care of your question?
That's got
Okay.
it. Perfect.
Randy, and were you good to go with the county database and coordinating getting that information out there?
Yes, we'll push it out as soon as we get it. And you know, even if we get it Friday night, I'll push it out as soon as we get it. Also, as soon as the poster is done, we already have a plan in place to distribute those throughout the county and within the smaller communities that may not get it as readily through the email service.
That sounds great. Thanks, Randy. Tina, have you all mentioned to the commissioners, just sort of on a one-off, people in their sphere of influence, or maybe small businesses they're aware of in their districts or whatever?
I will bring it up at their meeting on Monday.
Okay, great. And by then you'll probably have the completed information that you can hand out to them as well. Thanks, Tina. And also, Tina, while I've got you unmuted, you have something in mind. I know you have to coordinate with Dave, but with newspaper ads or whatever.
Right. I mean, all of this can go, but it's just, I don't have any of the information. So
Yeah, right.
as soon as we have it, then we'll get it going.
Yep, great. All right, well, I think the rest of this promotion plan's already been covered, so we'll move on. I'm down to the fourth bullet point under this first item on the agenda. So let me rehash for a moment kind of our direct aid plan. Our direct aid plan had money for the school districts, money for 3 different county agencies, the health department, emergency services, and the county at large. It had money for Tabor College with the COVID lab and the hospital retrofitting. And then it had money that had to be applied for through a grant process for nonprofits and businesses in the county. That's our direct aid plan. Those last 2, the nonprofits and the businesses, have to be applied for. Those other organizations were approved, and when we get a clean approval, they can start submitting receipts and we can start distributing funds, i.e., a receipt has to be at least $150. Okay, so with the school district superintendents, Aaron, when it's time to let them know, and it's not quite time yet, and I'll tell us why in a moment, but you would, I assume, send them emails with the content of the email being consistent, and I'll show that in a minute. And so you'll let the school superintendents know that through an email that's been predetermined what they need to do now. Is that your understanding, Aaron?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess for the county agencies, Deidre, Tina, Janine, Randy, that you all are the ones. I mean, you can look at the email that I have, but you don't need to send it to each other, I don't think.
The county departments still have to go through they still need to present their projects to the commissioners, because the commissioners will need to give their initial approval because they haven't seen any of the projects. And so that will, I've got that scheduled for Monday for all the departments to just go over their projects that are existing and get the commissioner's nod on it before we can move forward to purchase what we need.
And so to be sure I'm on the same page with you, Tina, so an example of that is this mobile command center, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was tracking with you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So,
Just because the commissioners are the policymakers and decision makers in our organization, not the department heads. And
For
so
sure.
we have one more level of approval for our organization overall.
Gotcha. And then well then, Tina, maybe to bridge that to, so what needs to happen with Tabor College? My assumption has been that we would just need to turn in our receipts for the things we've spent the money on. The commissioners would ultimately approve or deny those, and then checks would be cut. Is that basically right?
I think what we talked about is each organization, once they've gone through their own approval process for their organization, those receipts would then go, didn't we say they would be submitted to Christine and go to the
Yes.
accounting firm? And then once the accounting firm reviews to make sure they're in compliance with the plan, they come to the commission for approval of the payment.
Yes, and that's what I meant. I had skipped
Yeah.
directly to the commission, but that's ultimately what I
Yeah,
meant. Yeah.
that's kind of the flow that I see, but the county hasn't had our internal approval yet.
I gotcha. Okay, so let's look at let's look at this communication that here it is, I think. Okay, so primarily this email, Aaron, I think is going to the school superintendents. So it's explaining to them, and you'd have to pull it off of our documentation for each one, how much money they've been approved for, Aaron. And it's explaining to them how much they've been approved for. It's explaining to them basically what Tina just said, that they would submit their invoice or receipt to Christine. And then it would go to the accounting firm and so forth and so on. And then it talks about this December 10 deadline. This says the 10th, Aaron. That's where I had said we'll change that to the 5th. So if I'll resend this to you, Aaron, with the proper date there. And then all of it has to be ultimately in by the 10th so that we can handle it by the 31st. And then Aaron, right here, I'm assuming you would put your email address.
Right. And I mean, if they send it, if I send this out and it's approved, I mean, they can start getting checks before December, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so part of the things that they would get will probably already, like, let's just take Marion. You've probably spent some of that money already.
Yes.
So as long as you have it in by October 5th or November 5th, you could get those checks sooner. But I think that's to say, ultimately, you've got to get it all in by December 10th.
Right. We don't have to, in other words, we don't have to submit it all at once.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when do you want me to send this letter out?
Okay, so I'll get to that. We're headed, that's a good question. We're headed to that. So bear with me on that. So maybe my point earlier was the school districts are really the only ones who need this email. The rest of us are looking at each other right now. We don't really need to send this to anybody else but the school districts.
So now, will that go
Hold it, that's
to
not true.
the private school also?
Oh, good question, Deidre. I'm going to press pause. I was wrong. We need to send it to the cities. Did they, because they're in the direct aid plan too, Anthony. So we will need to send that email to the city administrators as well. Anthony, are you with us on that?
Yeah, I was talking away on mute, so you know.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can just edit this and we can send that to the cities too.
Yeah, and we can. So, Aaron, what I'll do is I'll send you and Anthony an email that makes sure we're all exactly on the same page when it's time to send this out. Now, Deidre, your question was the private school, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll need to apply for a
Okay.
grant through the
Well-
nonprofit.
Here's my question though. We've had this discussion and I'm not sure where the board has landed. Are we going to treat them like the school districts and the money just come out of the nonprofit, or are we expecting them to turn in an application?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought maybe a little bit of both was what I had in my mind, Anthony, but I'm not
Okay.
stuck on that.
Yeah, so maybe they submitted an application because we're kind of requiring that for those programs, and the state may want us to do that anyways. But then our logic for how much we give them could be, this is what we gave the public schools.
Right.
Am I tracking right?
That's kind of what I had in mind. Does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
What about you, Deidre? Does that sound like at least on the front end, a way to approach it and then just see what we're looking at the time?
Right. Yeah, I think as long as we use, I mean, they're a school, they're a part of our counties, so I think whatever formula was determined for the other schools, I think they should be using that same formula to allocate those dollars.
Okay. Okay. Yep, good question. All right, give me just a second. Okay, now I'm going to pull up, and Aaron, this will answer your question about when should I send this announcement of aid being available to the schools. I think this will help answer that question. So give me a minute here.
Is it okay if I make a comment?
Please do.
On the letter, I think that we should encourage agencies not to hold their expenses till the end. I think we need something in there that says, please turn in your expenses as you receive, as you pay them each month, and don't hold them to the end.
Thanks, Christine. That's a good suggestion. So what I've received you to say is maybe tweak the wording of what I had on the screen a moment ago to encourage them that we really need you to turn these in as you have them available. Am I hearing you right?
That was Tina that said
Oh,
that.
sorry,
I
Tina.
I think that's what she was saying.
Okay. All right, great. I will tweak that before we send that out, because otherwise we've got a bottleneck, is I think what you're saying, right, Tina?
Right. You know, because the way the letter says it, like what Aaron said, we know the intent is that the last of their receipts, the last day they can turn them in is that date, but we want them to turn them in as they go. We don't want to have everything held to the last. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that's.
And I think Janine may have another question about something, if that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, on the private school, how much of a chunk is that going to take out of our nonprofit grant?
Yeah, I don't.
I calculated that the other day. Just give me a second here.
Oh, great.
I guess I'm a little bit in the dark. What is the private school?
It's the school up by Durham, the Holderman School.
Oh,
Of course.
there's one by Burns too. Holdermans have a school in Burns too.
Do they? But
yeah.
I think that is just over the Marion County line.
Oh, okay. So it might be in Butler County.
I think we've been through this when we did hearing and vision screenings.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Janine, it's going to be about 16,000. That number, though, does not include their kindergarten. I didn't get kindergarten numbers, I don't think. So it's 48 up to 8th grade. We'll add in kindergarten, so it could be a few more students, but around 16,000. So it's not as much as I thought maybe it was going to be.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification on all that.
It was going to change things, so thank you.
Yep. Hey, Christine, would you weigh in a little bit on this? I don't know if I called a question, but what you were talking about with what you messaged me about the guidelines to offer lump sums to small businesses?
Yes, there is now, unless they change it, but there is a possibility within the guidelines to give a small stipend to small business. Because some of the small business, due to COVID, they've used up their working capital. They don't have that money to go out and make the fixes they need or to buy inventory. You know, it could be like $1,000 to $1,500 that they need. I don't know if that was something that the task force would want to visit and see if that is possible. Because I know there's probably 3 or 4 small business that I can think of that they don't have the working capital to keep going.
So Christine,
And
wouldn't that be facilitated through the business grant application form?
Yes.
Okay.
One other thing, which I think kind of goes along with what Christine was saying, with the nonprofit and the for-profit business, the way I understand it, revenue replacement is acceptable.
Yes, it is for
So,
sure.
One of the things that we'll have to do between we've released the application and it's time to start reviewing the applications, we're going to need to really narrow down what's allowed and what's not. I've kind of reviewed it, but you know, I think we probably all, but me in particular, I need to read it some more.
Well, and
Yeah.
it needs to be made clear that it's unduplicated, you know, that they have not gotten assistance in other manners for that same item.
Yep. Absolutely.
Does the cover letter have some of that kind of language in it, Anthony?
I don't know that the cover letter specifically says that, but in the application, we ask them, what have you received money for? Like, we want them to list out the funds that they've received and how much, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So we'll have
Okay.
that information, but I don't know that that's in the cover letter.
So what I'll probably do, Anthony, when you send the cover letter out, is I'll probably recommend a paragraph, and I'll work with Christine on this, that kind of gives them a clue of a few things that do count and what doesn't count, so to speak, or what can't be used.
Yeah. You
and
know,
so-
I say that there is a little piece about allowable expenses. And I took that from another county's program. So those paragraphs came directly from another
Okay.
entities.
Okay.
And I did send out cover letter and the application already. Maybe at the tail end, you know, I don't know everybody's schedule. I like to keep meetings under an hour, like everybody else, but maybe after we've run through our agenda, if we all want to take a look at it real quick, maybe we could be okay with it before we get done with our meeting. That's up to you guys, but I'm throwing that out there.
I appreciate you throwing that out there, but that is not going to work for me. And I would like to take a close look at that letter.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So remember me saying that in our memo that came back from the state, we got a completely clean approval for our reimbursement plan, but at least the way I interpret it, we got approval, but not what I'm going to call clean approval for our direct aid plan. So I read it 3, 4, 5 times, talked with our accounting firm, did a lot of other reading, and came up with what you see on your screen as a response to what they seem to be saying they'd like some more information for. And I'm not going to read this to you. You're welcome to read it. But I am going to focus on this section right here, because this is where we need to make sure we have some agreement, and in particular, this section. So they said, how are you going to select and decide who gets awarded grants in your public school piece? Well, that's pretty straightforward for us. Each school district is automatically selected. They're automatically selected, and it's based on their enrollment. We are allocating a per person amount in keeping with each school district's respective enrollment. And that's the same for the city relief. Each city is automatically selected based on population. And so to me, that was really cut and dried. But for the county businesses and nonprofits, it's not nearly as cut and dried. We do have a cover letter and we have an application form. And when and it won't be me, it'll probably be Janine, I'm supposing, provides this information to them. And we'll talk a bit more about, and Janine will have some things to say about who and how we provide this information to. But when we do that, we can offer up like our cover letter and our application form as appendices to this response letter. But here's the piece that's most important for us to contemplate. So we receive these grants or these submissions, requests, these applications for a grant from businesses and nonprofits. We as a task force are going to have to make a recommendation to the commissioners who gets them and for how much. These were, after doing quite a bit of thinking, this was sort of the process for making decisions that I have come up with. So this isn't set in stone by any means. We can change this, add to it or whatever. But here's what I came up with. Number of people employed by the organization. In other words, what's their full-time employment? So part-timers would figure into that in an FTE. Potential number of jobs that could be created or saved by an organization. Number of people served by the organization. And not that, remember, this is us looking at these factors. We may have to do some research at times to come up with the answers to these questions, but we may not feel like we need to get absolute exact numbers. A lot of us will probably have a pretty good idea of these things based on our knowledge of our own communities. Service provided for disadvantaged people, I think, would be an important piece. Overall impact experienced from COVID. In other words, how hard has this organization been hit? And then finally, the level of contribution and compassion that's offered to the county by this organization. So now I want to pause and see what you all think of that. Are there things I'm missing? Am I not being clear with the way I've worded something? I'll just open it up.
Just real quick, I took those items A through F and I added a few things to the application that you guys all got here just a little bit ago. That gives the business or nonprofit the opportunity to answer some of those questions. Some of them we're already asking, but a couple of the other ones I've added into the application. I can add more, take out based off our discussion here.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that.
Rusty, letter F, can you define that a little bit better, especially the second part?
Thank you.
Contribution and compassion, the compassion part?
Yeah, I guess.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess on the compassion part, for example, I'm thinking about, and I don't know everybody's community as well as, say, I know Hillsborough, but Main Street Ministries is an example of that for me here in Hillsborough. They're an organization that gives single women, single mothers, an ability to have housing and food and some education for how to get back on their feet. And they allow them to stay in an apartment for a very reasonable cost. And it's that, to me, that's a very compassionate organization in our community.
Okay, the scope of the organization. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And also, you need on there what they have received already from government programs. Because some companies just, they need a second round. You know, we had the first round of PPP and used that all up, and now we need another round.
So Dave, could you let me repeat what I think I heard you say, that add a bullet point here that would say something to the effect, amount already received. Is that from the CARES Act? Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, there's CARES Act, PPP, and you know, there's lots of different programs in the last 3 or 4 months.
So could it be amount received from various other, do you want to put governmental, or do you want to leave that word out?
I would say governmental would cover everybody.
Say just COVID relief.
Yeah, amount already received from governmental COVID relief.
Yes.
Other COVID relief programs.
About amount of COVID relief already received.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anthony, is that, you probably maybe already had that one in there or no?
Yeah, that one's in there, and I just, this isn't reflected on what I sent you guys earlier, but I beefed that up to make sure they include the amount of money and a brief description of what the money was used for, and I put an example, which is 5,000 PPP payroll for April and May. So, as an example, there's other things that they could have done with the money. So,
With the wording, Rusty, I'm concerned because there are a lot of relief agencies out there that are nonprofits that are donating to these folks that are not government entities, and the monies or resources they get won't contribute to that big number that requires the DUNS number. So, if, for example, the Latter-day Saint Church was giving out $5,000 grants to food shelves, and several of our food shelves took advantage of that, and we have another one that may be taking an additional advantage of one of them. So do you want to add that in, because are we really looking at the government funding, or are we looking at funding from other nonprofits like our VOAS, our Volunteer Organizations Disasters? They've been handing out a lot of money to different organizations as well.
So wouldn't that be covered since he didn't put the word government in there?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You would have to add in any nonprofits that you put in there, or you wouldn't be answering the question correctly, correct?
So,
Right. But I think the way he has it written, it means any relief, whether it be government or volunteer.
I
Right.
think what,
My question is, are we focusing on government funding that they've been given and not from other volunteer organizations?
yeah, I think what Randy's trying to say is he's calling into question, and I think that's legitimate, of whether we should make it a blanket statement, because really we don't have that right. We really only have the right to assess what government relief they've received, and not what relief they may have received from other organizations. In other words, the rules of this Spark money only pertain to whether or not they've had things covered by other CARES Act relief. So I guess I would probably agree with that. I don't know how you all feel, but I put the word government in there because we probably should, is what I'm thinking, given what I've read about the stipulations on the Spark money.
Yes, I feel the same way, that we're only interested what they got grants from the government. The private organizations, we're not worried about what they're giving away.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other thoughts on this list? Does this seem like a solid list of, I don't know, items that we would go through as we try to decide how to award grants? Okay. I'm going to receive the silence as we're on board with this. Janine, could you say a little bit about what you received from the state in regards to, what they call it, an aid administrative consultant or something like that?
Yes, I didn't know that we'd requested one. So it kind of surprised me.
I think there was a communication that said that that every agency was going to get one.
Okay.
Correct.
And so, yeah.
Okay, and that's Tuesday afternoon?
I'm sorry, I don't have that
I don't
in front
have
of
it
me.
with me.
But I think the idea is anything that they wanted more information on, they're actually assigning a person to each organization that's receiving the Spark funding, each county.
Okay,
So I
so
think I reply, just going over that, seeing if that meets what they're asking for.
well, so yeah, my question is there an actual time to set up to talk with this person on Tuesday? Am I hearing you right?
Did you look, isn't there a time on that email?
I didn't see one. Maybe I missed it.
I believe it says 1:30 to 2:30.
I believe it does.
Is it going to be a Zoom or a phone call or what?
A phone call, they said.
Yeah, and they haven't sent the information, the specifics on that yet, of the number or anything.
Is that something that I need to try to take part in? I'm glad to. And if so, how does that facilitate it that I can take part in that phone conversation? Are you guys not sure?
Yeah, I'm not
Until
sure.
we get the information on how it's going to be done. Usually there's just a call-in number, and if so, then you could call in.
Okay.
It's usually the way those are done.
So,
I'm looking at the email now.
yeah, tell us what that says, Christine.
The time set aside for your regional meeting is Tuesday, September 15 from 1:30 to 2:30. It says
Yeah,
1:30 a.m.
Yeah, I think that's a typo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You will be receiving a link to this call in the near future. So I'm assuming that it is a Zoom. And that it's just a nice little message saying, hey, we would like to schedule a meeting with you and your regional technical advisor to ask general questions.
Okay, so then Tina and Janine, would you provide us with that link so that anybody from the task force who would like to Zoom in could when it comes? But I will try to make that a priority, and then we'll have that letter ready if they want us to send it to them, or if they're just going to ask us some questions and we give a verbal explanation, and that's good to go. So there, Aaron, now there's the answer to you and Anthony's question about when do we send to the cities and the school district superintendents notification that they're receiving some direct aid allocation. It's after Tuesday when we find out if we've got a clean approval of the direct aid plan.
One thing to be careful about, if everybody from the committee jumps on, that could be an open meetings violation.
Okay.
So it'd be better if we just have maybe a couple designees jump on that call, and possibly Scott Lloyd or someone from the accounting firm. But I mean, if we post it out there that you might be attending, that we just could get into a little issue if everybody jumps on there with the open meetings.
Thank you, Tina. So what if I suggest something and you all just respond? Anthony, does it work for you?
Yeah, that would work for me.
What if myself, Anthony, Tina, Janine, and Scott, or whoever his designee is, would you all be okay with that?
I might stop by then.
I'm fine with that because I have another meeting anyway.
And I'm not on the committee, but I am on the approval for the county at the state level. So I don't count towards your numbers.
Okay. Okay. It's hearing no more comments. Let's plan on that then. And Janine or Tina will send Anthony and I the link. And Christine, would you, when that link comes, I'll make sure you get it. Would you then coordinate with one of the accounting firm's staff to see if they can join on that?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Then final thing, and I'm looking at the time right now, and I'm okay for about 10 or 15 more minutes. Are you all okay for that long? I think it would be helpful if we went over this administration plan. It's really, Tina's already covered it, so I don't think it'll take very long. See if I can find it here. I think this is it. Okay, so we would be looking at emailing all organizations who have already been approved for direct aid with the maximum amount. We've already talked about that. That's Aaron and Anthony. Number 2, we'd execute the promotion and communication flow, get the word out. We've talked about that. I think we're ready to go on that probably by Monday. 3, we talked about that already. 4, administrative assistant receives, and that's Christine, receives all the requests with appropriate documentation. She's going to triage them a bit, organize them, and her and I will work together to create a spreadsheet template for how to organize this, and we'll consult with SJH&L, and then that'll be submitted electronically, the documentation to SJH&L by the 5th of each month. Or maybe that should say the 6th. That should say the 6th, because the organizations don't have to get them in until the 5th. And if that needs to be the 7th, Christine, to give you good time, that's fine too. Number 5, SJH&L reviews and recommends disbursement. And I'm going to suggest to them that they complete that by the 12th of each month. And then number 6, the task force reviews quickly and recommends to Marion County Commission. My guess is at that point, number 6 is a bit of a rubber stamp. Not totally. It never is totally, obviously, but my guess is by that point, that's how we'll look at it. Number 7, Marion County Clerk places the recommendations on the County Commission agenda for action. The Treasurer, the Commission approves or denies recommendations, and then the County Treasurer processes payments via check and sends to the recipients. Am I missing anything? With the silence, I assume everybody is receiving that the way we had talked about it at our last meeting, and we're good to go with that. Very good. Okay, so that's final. Let's look at our calendars for a next meeting date. I had in mind October 2. But that would be to process grant applications. So what do y'all think? Do we need a meeting before then? If anyone's speaking, he must be muted.
I would think probably on October 2, I'm going to be in Branson or on my way there. So I'll just be on phone. So.
Okay. The reason I asked, do we need a meeting before then? Because in my mind, I don't typically, I'm thinking, well, there's agenda and we need to meet, and I don't have that in my head. So I may be missing something.
So Janine, do we want to meet the 25th before you leave maybe? And just wrap up just to make sure all the applications have been sent out? I don't know.
Well, depending on what we find out on Tuesday also.
Yeah, it might be nice to meet, for you all to meet, you know, after we talk to that technician. But you may not need to, depends on what they say.
Why don't we set a meeting for next Friday and for the 2nd? If we don't need to meet next Friday, then we'll just cancel the meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
I see thumbs up and heads nodding. I'm good with that if everyone else is. 10 a.m. still be okay for everybody?
I won't be able to attend, but that's fine.
Okay. All right. I think we're good then. Any other questions or final comments before we adjourn?
I just looked at my calendar. The 25th won't work for me, but the other date will.
Well, we changed the 25th to next week, the 18th, Randy.
Oh, I thought he said 2 weeks in a row.
No, sorry. Glad you brought that up. So what we're talking about, and correct me if what you suggested is not what I heard, Anthony, but I think you suggested September 18 and October 2.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, and Tina and Christine, I will forward you the video. Tina, the video and audio, and Christine, probably just the audio. You probably don't need the video recorded version. Dave, what were you gonna say?
Is Anthony going to start emailing me stuff right away?
Anthony, are you emailing Dave the stuff that he needs? You probably didn't copy him on that.
Want me to email what I've got now, or do I wait till you guys have all looked at it?
No, email with what you got now so he can get started with a rough outline.
Okay, I will send it your way, Dave.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Bye now.